Greetings and welcome to Module 2 of Diverse Learners. Got a little chilly for us in Jonesboro and a little bit of sprinkle, but luckily we got neat new jackets from our department chair, which I've been enjoying wearing, which is pretty fun. So hopefully you have enjoyed your first readings from the first module, your first discussion posting experience. Now, if you don't have your grades in yet for peer responses and participation, which we're due on Sunday night, and you're watching this video on a Monday morning, for example, I would say please be patient as the academic assistants complete the reading and looking at your discussion posts. And I do browse the discussion forums as well from time to time, but obviously there are a lot of candidates in this class, so we'll make every effort to turn those around as quickly as possible. But please do bear with us as we get your feedback on those. But don't hesitate to reach out to your academic assistant or to me at any time if you have any questions about that. But by now you should have your feedback on your initial reading response from Module 1, right? So, reminder about weekly announcements. Look for them in your A-State email on Monday, possibly Tuesday, depending on the ebb and flow of popular questions. But also, the major announcements will be in parallel on the Blackboard announcements link. As I mentioned before, please keep in mind, right, that the use of BioSig ID it's a university level decision, program level decision. Was not my personal decision. And so, for that reason, I'll try to do the best I can to answer any questions you have, but it's more likely that BioSig ID support is your best hope. I will likely have to refer you to them. I have noticed that the strongest results and the most minimal amount of technical difficulty with BioSig ID seems to happen when you use an updated Chrome browser on a desktop computer with a current updated system, updated things like Flash, etc. On that browser. It's always a good rule of thumb when dealing with Blackboard that when it comes to discussion posting and accessing documents, that a tablet or a smartphone will not necessarily work as well as a desktop or laptop computer with an updated browser. So with that in mind, let's jump into our content. A little bit shorter this week in terms of content, as far as our text, and I'm a huge fan of our two articles this week. So English language learners is our theme for this week. Chapter 2 of our text jumps right into it. That especially noting page 32, the growth of the number of ELL learners since the year 2000. There are different types of English language learners. There is no one magic label for ELL learners that fits all of them perfectly, right? There are different types of ELL learners with significant differences, as we'll unpack a little bit here. So the first page 34, as we start to expand, these are ELL learners that have adequate formal schooling. These are arrivals in our classroom that arrive at grade level in their native language studies. So there may be a language gap in terms of English, but in terms of content knowledge and prior knowledge, existing schema, right, they are at grade level in their learning. Page 35, we have limited and interrupted schooling, which essentially means that they are behind relative to their grade level placement. And I will emphasize with that again, that is, they are behind due to their content learning and prior knowledge, not behind because of the language skill, the language difficulty with English, right? And then page 35 to 36, we have long-term English learners. These are students who can read and write in English. They can conduct schooling in English, but they are at risk, falling behind. So this would seem like, complicated playbook, right? Well, figure 2.3 on page 41 is particularly handy. The instructional support and effectiveness instruction. In other words, there are options. You have a palette of options available to you. That figure 2.3, it's a great one to bookmark. One element from this chapter that we will come back to next week, and possibly a few other points. Krashen's theory of second language acquisition on page 42. It consists of 5 hypotheses, essentially, of learning and acquisition: natural order, monitor, input, and effective filter. All right. Krashen's theory of second language acquisition functions as a lens, right, for the 3 keys of effective ELL teaching. So, in other words, there are 3 things that we need to do. And we can look at these 3 things from different ways in terms of Krashen's theory of second language acquisition. You can think of Krashen in terms of maybe 5 different ways to approach our 3 keys. So the 3 keys of effective ELL teaching, they sum these up very well, and I do want to emphasize that as complex and sometimes difficult as it can be to begin the process of meeting the needs of ELL students, sometimes the hardest part about it is figuring out where to get started. The nice thing, especially the younger kids, are language learning is a snowball rolling down the hill, right? The younger those kiddos are, the quicker they pick up a new language. It's a fact. When we're younger than about age 13, we suck up language like a sponge. So, sorry for the tangent. Back to those 3 keys of effective ELL teaching, right? Teaching language via content, page 42. This is extremely important because you're either working to make up for a content knowledge gap, or you have students who are at grade level when it comes to content, right? So you can't dump the content in favor of teaching them English, because then they will fall behind on the content. So you use your content knowledge and your content teaching as a vehicle to support the language teaching, right? Page 46. This is not only a good idea for jazzing up your classroom in general, but it's particularly helpful with ELL students. Organizing your curriculum via themes, especially when you're working with literature via themes, via genre-based, and even a genre-based approach to teaching in the content areas as well can be extremely helpful. Page 46. And also, then, the third on page 49, draw upon student backgrounds. Right? Language and culture are intimately connected every time. So if you draw upon the student's background, you're connecting with that student's identity. And if language and culture are intimately connected, if you connect with culture, you are connecting with language as well. And we have to bring their native language to the table so that we can begin linking new knowledge in English to that native language, right? So therefore, if you work with their identity and their background, you are working with their language. Some great take-home points in Chapter 2 that I've really gotten to the point where I feel like there are some nuggets in Chapter 2 that if you're in a position, or possibly you have a colleague that is working with ELL students maybe for the first time, or maybe struggling, there are some great nuggets in Chapter 2 where and how to get started that I think will serve you well. So, regarding questions on whether or not to be reading the PDF articles, yes, of course. Journal articles are one of the most awesome things in the world. First we invented sliced bread, and then we invented academic journals, right? So, as a graduate student, I know you're not made of abundant free time, but recommended does not mean it's okay to skip it if you need to. Rather, what it means is recommended means this will enrich and enhance your understanding of the course content. And there are some very specific reasons why I have selected typically two articles to go along with each reading in the Diverse Learners text. One is to further highlight that theme of the week, and the other, typically a case study, is to help us see this type of diverse learner through the eyes of that type of diverse learner, to stoke your own dispositional views, right? So keep in mind that course goal that we have, right, of growing your professional and dispositional thinking about these topics, which will be reflected in your final course paper. This is why we have a dispositional highlight article each week, right? So absolutely, of course you should be reading them, right? And one of the reasons that I have my talking points is to help you navigate them more efficiently, more effectively, right? So Perez and Holmes, ensuring academic literacy for all ELL students. It's a great article. I feel it's very user friendly, right? The central dilemma that they see, and the very well articulated definition they have of academic literacy is on page 33 of the article. That's the second page of the PDF. They use the term culturally and linguistically diverse, CLD. They use that equals ELL, right? That is their term. That is their term for ELL students. Sometimes different sources, different scholarly viewpoints might not necessarily use the term ELL per se, but that is what they mean. And there are considerations of culturally, linguistically diverse students that they break down some bullet points. So their focus, their push, 3 bullet points on page 35, are the use of research-based practices, right, working with these types of students. So they encourage us on page 38, 39 to consider the academic dimension of the curriculum, right? This, of course, is a great match. The academic dimension, right? The content, right, which we were just talking about out of chapter 2. That's my big link, this article with the chapter. They have cognitive and metacognitive strategies on page 40, which I think are great, because cognitive strategies are really what a lot of areas of reading comprehension are all about. So those of you that are working with ELL learners at the age where readers need to be practicing greater strides in comprehension, that'll come in handy. Their conclusion section in this article, I think, is very well articulated and very organized. You can even skip to the conclusion section first before you read the article, and it'll give you a great sense of where you're supposed to end up at the end of reading the article. Okay, so our dispositional highlight, supporting teachers of English learners by leveraging students' linguistic strengths. This is an article from the Reading Teacher, which is one of the best journals in our field in reading and literacy. It has both a very strong theoretical backbone as well as very applicable to teaching practice. In other words, you should be able to pull most articles from Reading Journal and hit the ground running in your classroom with what they talk about. That's one of the great things about Reading Teacher, and it's why they publish it the way they do. By the way, as A-State students, you have access to the Reading Teacher along with many other types of journals through our library website. So no need to subscribe to it for now, right? Just look up that journal through the library website. So their study in this article, it's meant to explore research on professional development for teachers of English learners through the eyes of the major framework in the field. Dispositions, pedagogical knowledge, and skills and practice. Right away when I saw this article, I remember thinking this is a great fit for our course structure in terms of our discussions, right? And papers where we talk about core concept and applicability and dispositional growth, right? So in other words, this article fits into the line of logic of our thinking that we practice on a weekly basis in this course, as well as the big picture on our paper, right? So regarding dispositions, they note on page 407 that especially over the course of a single semester, there is some evidence that pre-service teachers can benefit from highly focused instruction designed to reduce prejudice. I think this is hugely telling that pre-service teachers, right? So in theory, none of you are pre-service teachers, right? You're in-service teachers, but this is very telling for especially those I work with pre-service teachers right now, right? That you want to get the most bang for your buck in terms of working with teachers and skills and work and support for working with ELL students. Focused instruction that reduces prejudice in the pre-service stage of the game can pay off in dividends later, right? I find that pretty interesting. Regarding pedagogical knowledge, they ask us, what do teachers need to know about their students and subjects to be able to represent the subject matter in a way that will be understood? a huge question, and once again, that is our main pedagogical link through all of the readings in Module 2, right? That we use the content knowledge as a vehicle also for supporting the ELL growth, right? We don't sidestep the content. So then, therefore, the question is, what do we need to know to be able to represent our content in a way that's teachable? Regarding skills and practice, they note that on page 408, also, a number of prominent researchers have identified increased understandings of language as an important lever for improving the reading comprehension of ELs, of English learners, English language learners, quoting the article. So an increased understanding of English language will support or will leverage upward their reading comprehension. So, as you might then assume from that, right, yes, we have to use our content, we have to teach our content, and we can't sidestep our content. But we will get diminishing returns with the reading comprehension process if we are not also supporting and growing their skills in English. So, as you sift through their case study data, which is, in my opinion, the best part of reading a case study article is when there's case study data in the article. There is one major nugget on page 410 to 411. They say, in other words, translation triggered something cognitive, which is awesome, because when you are going through a translation process of putting language A side by side with language B and jumping back and forth between the two, you have some very complex processes going on up here. For people who fluently speak multiple languages and are very fluent in the translation process, it may seem very natural, but it's still a very complex cognitive process, right? And whenever we are engaged in complex cognitive processes in the classroom, the gears are turning, right? And that's good for learning in any event. Take a close look at the steps, A for F, for how they approach translation on page 411. Also on page 411, this teaching focused students' attention on meaning making and broader text level understandings, and also, as noted above, these are precisely the areas of expertise needed to support the reading development of EL students. So some great pedagogical theories, some great take-home nuggets for the classroom. A great article, I think, fits right in with the mission of this module. One additional reminder about Blackboard and rubric, right? The general discussion posting rubric, and the discussion resources on the sidebar. Don't forget to make those peer responses just as strong, right? That's the bottom of the rubric. Don't forget about a good hearty paragraph directly responding to that peer. Engage in that academic discussion. And as always, please continue to reach out via your A-State email address with your questions, and at this point, I hope you're also going to start reaching out with your fascinations and your ahas with the course content, because those are the kinds of emails I love. Makes the coffee and tea drinking in the morning all the better responding to those emails. And we'll see you in Module 3.